The Yamato wasn't just a ship. She was 72,000 tons of hardened steel, designed to dominate the Pacific Ocean forever. Her main 18-inch guns weighed more than entire American destroyers, firing armor-piercing shells the size of a compact family car. She was the ultimate floating fortress, an invincible titan constructed to crush the United States Navy in a single surface engagement. Yet this terrifying Leviathan was doomed by a fatal engineering flaw that left her helpless against a new, buzzing technological predator. We will uncover how the mightiest battleship ever built was systematically dismantled by a swarm of fragile, fabric-covered American aircraft. Stick around to discover why the Yamato's legendary armor was useless against the physics of water and the precision of air power. By April 1945, the Imperial Navy was desperate, launching Operation Tengo as a suicidal one-way mission to defend Okinawa beaches. The Yamato was loaded with only enough fuel to reach the battle purely to beach herself and fight until destroyed. This was not a strategic naval sortie, it was a glorious death ride for the last samurai of the ocean. The ship herself was a marvel of over-engineering, featuring the thickest armor belt ever placed on a naval vessel in history. Her 9 massive main guns could hurl a 3,000-pound projectile over 26 miles with terrifying pinpoint mathematical accuracy. Japanese designers believed that speed and massive firepower would allow her to engage multiple enemy battleships simultaneously and emerge victorious. However, they failed to realize that the era of the battleship duel had ended years before her keel was laid. American intelligence cracked the codes instantly, knowing the Titan's exact location before she even left the safety of the harbor. Task Force 58 did not send battleships to meet her. They launched a massive sci-fi swarm of nearly 400 aircraft. The American strategy was brutal and simple: overwhelm the target's defenses with sheer numbers attacking from every altitude and angle. On the morning of April 7th, the Yamato's radar screen lit up with a terrifying cloud of incoming hostile contacts. The ship's anti-aircraft defenses were formidable on paper, boasting 150 guns, but they lacked advanced radar fire control. Without proximity fuses, the Japanese gunners were trying to hit fast-moving flies with slow sledgehammers, wasting thousands of rounds. The first wave of helldivers pushed over into their dives, treating the massive battleship like a stationary training target in practice. American pilots were shocked by the sheer size of the beast, describing it as shooting at a massive steel island. The first bombs struck the deck, obliterating the radar room and instantly blinding the giant's ability to coordinate her defensive fire. But the real killers were the Avengers, the torpedo bombers slowly circling the water like wolves hunting a wounded bison. They executed a classic hammer and anvil attack, dropping torpedoes on both sides to prevent the ship from turning away. The first torpedo smashed into the port side, punching a hole through the anti-torpedo bulge and flooding the auxiliary boiler rooms. This was the first critical hit, causing the massive vessel to list significantly and slowing her top speed effectively. A listing battleship is a dying battleship because the main guns can no longer elevate or train on the targets. To correct the list, the Japanese captain made a ruthless decision to counter-flood the starboard engine and boiler rooms immediately. This desperate damage control measure drowned hundreds of his own crew members who were trapped below, sacrificing them for stability. It worked temporarily, leveling the deck, but it robbed the ship of vital speed and maneuverability when she needed it most. The second wave of American planes arrived, seeing a slowed, smoking giant that was bleeding oil into the churning sea. The pilots noticed the port side was already damaged, so they coordinated ruthlessly to strike the exact same spot again. This targeted focus fire strategy overwhelmed the ship's structural integrity, ripping the hull open like a tin can. 4 more torpedoes slammed into the port side, defeating the watertight bulkheads that were supposed to keep her afloat. The flooding became uncontrollable and the ship began to roll aggressively, turning the deck into a sliding slope of death. The vaunted 18-inch guns, the pride of the empire, were rendered useless, frozen in place by the severe angle. American pilots reported that the anti-aircraft fire began to die down as the gun crews were washed into the ocean. The Yamato was taking punishment that would have sunk a standard fleet, instantly absorbing 10 torpedoes and 7 heavy bombs. But physics is undefeated, with thousands of tons of water rushing in the center of gravity shifted fatally to port. The unsinkable fortress was now capsizing her massive superstructure, dipping toward the waves that would soon claim her forever. Inside the ship, the situation was a horror movie with lights failing and men scrambling in total darkness against rushing water. The damage control failure was total. The counter-flooding system had actually hastened their demise by lowering the ship's freeboard. As the ship rolled completely over the massive 18-inch shells, the magazines broke loose from their secure storage racks. These massive projectiles slid across the deck and smashed into the fuses, triggering a catastrophic chain reaction deep inside. The resulting explosion was one of the largest non-nuclear detonations in history, visible from 100 miles away. A mushroom cloud of fire and steel rose 20,000 feet into the air, marking the tomb of the Titan. 3,000 men perished in seconds, vaporized by the blast or sucked down by the suction of the sinking hull. The American planes circled overhead, photographing the death throes of the era of the battleship in real time. It proved that armor thickness was irrelevant in an age where aircraft could deliver heavy ordnance to any coordinate. The Yamato had fired her main guns at the aircraft using special beehive anti-air shells, but they did nothing. This failure symbolized the total obsolescence of the surface fleet doctrine that had ruled navies for centuries. The cost to build the Yamato was astronomical, consuming a significant percentage of the Japanese national economy and steel supply. For the price of this one ship, they could have built thousands of aircraft that might have defended the homeland. It was a strategic blunder of sunk cost fallacy, pouring resources into a weapon system that had no modern utility. The wreckage now lies in 2 pieces on the ocean floor, a silent monument to hubris and technological transition. The destruction of the Yamato broke the spirit of the Imperial Navy, proving the war was mathematically lost. American pilots returned to their carriers, having slain the Dragon without a single U.S. ship taking damage. The ratio of loss was staggering: 10 American planes and 12 men lost, versus a 70,000-ton super battleship. This engagement cemented the aircraft carrier as the new undisputed king of the ocean, a title it holds today. The specs of the Yamato were impressive on paper, but in the chaotic reality of war, they were meaningless. Speed range and the ability to project force over the horizon had officially replaced armor and caliber size. The Japanese clung to the big gun tradition, refusing to adapt to the three-dimensional warfare introduced by naval aviation. Operation Tengo was a tragedy of leadership, wasting thousands of lives on a symbol rather than a tactical asset. The counter-flooding decision remains a controversial study in ethics, proving the brutal calculus required in high-stakes naval combat. Had the Yamato stayed in port, she would have likely been bombed into scrap metal by high-altitude B-29s anyway. Her sortie was a final desperate gasp, a death of the samurai moment played out on an industrial stage. Today, naval architects study the Yamato not for her strengths, but for the fatal flaws in her compartment design. The golden rivet that held the old world together had popped, and the age of air superiority had begun. Yamato was the ultimate dinosaur, the T-Rex of the ocean, terrifying and powerful, but too slow to survive. The American aircraft were the Meteor, a swarm of small, fast extinction-level events that changed the environment instantly. No nation has ever built a battleship larger than the Yamato, because the lesson was learned in blood and oil. The image of that mushroom cloud signaled the end of the Romantic era, of naval warfare forever. It was no longer about who had the biggest guns, but who could control the skies above the fleet. The sinking of the Yamato wasn't just a victory for the U.S. Navy, it was a shift in global power. She sits at the bottom of the Pacific, the last and greatest monument to a style of war that went extinct.